Samuel Blake had been called many things in his life: farmer, widower, recluse, but the one word that truly fit him was lonely, because that's what the years had carved into him out there on the wide prairie where the wind had more voice than people and the wheat fields stretched farther than the eye could see. He lived alone in a creaking farmhouse built by his daddy, alone with the memory of a wife taken by fever and a child that never drew breath, and for near 15 years he buried himself in chores, rising before dawn to hitch the mule, plowing the same soil over and over, eating suppers in silence, and listening to the cicadas at night like they were mocking his solitude, until folks in town knew him as that quiet Blake fella, the one who didn't smile, the one who didn't linger, the one who carried grief like a second shadow. But fate has a mean way of turning a man's life when he least expects it, and one blistering summer morning Samuel rode into town for flour and nails and found himself staring at something he'd never imagined: a makeshift auction yard where instead of cattle or mules stood a single chained figure, a woman with tangled black hair, dirt on her face, and eyes that burned like fire under the midday sun. The sheriff was calling her the last Apache woman left behind, captured after some raid months earlier, and to the crowd she was nothing but property, a savage to be sold off to the highest bidder, though the bids being thrown were more insults than coin, men laughing, spitting, daring each other to buy her as though she were some kind of cruel joke. But Samuel, standing in the back with his sack of flour at his feet, felt something in his chest shift when he locked eyes with her, because there was no begging in her gaze, no fear, only a defiance that cut through him like a blade, and for the first time in years he saw not just another human but a reflection of his own spirit, wounded, stubborn, unbroken in the face of loss, before he even understood why, before he even thought about the money in his pocket meant for a new plow blade. He raised his hand and said, plain as day, "I'll take her," and the whole yard went silent as heads turned to gape at the quiet farmer who had never spoken more than a few words to anybody. A few dollars changed hands, the chains were struck off, and Samuel led her to his wagon where he offered a canteen of water, which she refused with her chin high even though her cracked lips told the truth of her thirst, and together they rode back across the prairie in silence, him stealing glances, her sitting stiff as a board, until finally he managed to whisper, "You're free now, not a prisoner here," words that sounded clumsy and small against the enormity of what she'd endured. Her name, he later learned, was Ayoka, meaning she brought happiness, though happiness was the last thing either of them knew in those early days, for when he brought her into his farmhouse she would not eat at first, would not sit, would not trust, waiting for the cruelty she was sure was coming. But Samuel never raised his voice or his hand, only set bread and water on the table, only kept about his chores, and after 3 days her hunger broke her pride just enough to take a bite, though. Her eyes never left him. Slowly, bit by bit, a fragile thread of trust began to spin between them, stronger with each sunrise, until one evening when the sky was painted red and gold she spoke her name aloud, and Samuel repeated it soft like a prayer, and that was the beginning of something neither of them could yet name. She started helping in the garden, tending chickens, grinding corn, and sometimes she sang in her language under her breath, a sound that filled the house in a way no fire ever had, and Samuel, who thought he'd forgotten how to feel, found himself listening just for the sake of hearing her voice. But word in small towns travels faster than prairie fire, and soon folks were whispering that Blake was keeping an Indian woman. Lawmen came knocking, neighbors warned him he'd face trouble, the preacher thundered that it was sin, yet Samuel stood on his porch with his weathered hat in hand and said only, "She ain't no prisoner, she's here 'cause I want her here," and though some threatened, none could shake him, because for the first time in years he had something worth standing for. Nights grew longer, talks grew deeper, and one starlit evening Ayoka told him of her people, her family slaughtered, her little brother carried off, her songs fading into silence, and Samuel, who had never cried since his wife died, felt hot tears burn his cheeks, because her grief was his grief, different in shape but carved from the same stone. In that moment he understood something he'd buried long ago, that pain can be a bridge, that loneliness shared becomes lighter, and that even two broken souls can find healing if they walk side by side. Seasons rolled on, wheat grew and fell. And somewhere in the quiet of those days love rooted itself, not in grand declarations or fiery passion, but in small steady ways, her laughter when a colt licked her hand, his smile when she braided her hair by the window, the comfort of knowing someone was waiting at the supper table. When storms came they faced them together, when floods ruined the field they rebuilt together, when Samuel fell sick it was Ayoka who nursed him with herbs and songs, holding his rough hand until fever broke, and by then he knew she wasn't just someone he'd brought home, she was home. In time the whispers in town shifted, folks saw not scandal but strength, not disgrace but devotion, for there was no denying the bond they carried, and though prejudice didn't vanish, respect began to take root. Even in hard hearts, years passed, and the farmhouse that once echoed with silence now rang with children's laughter, for love had given them a family, a new life stitched from the ashes of loss, a life not bound by skin or bloodlines but by kindness, sacrifice, and the stubborn will to keep walking forward. Samuel Blake, once the quiet farmer no one knew, became the man people spoke of with respect, the man who chose compassion over fear, humanity over hate, and Ayoka, once called the last Apache left behind, was not truly the last at all, for through her children, her songs, her teaching, her people lived on, not in chains but in freedom, woven forever into the land. And when the years finally weighed heavy on Samuel's shoulders, when his hair turned white and his back bent with time, he would sit on the porch beside Ayoka, her hand in his, and watch the fields dance in the wind, knowing that in choosing kindness that one hot day at the auction yard, he had chosen life again. Their story became one folks whispered across generations. That a broken farmer and a broken woman healed each other, that compassion can turn barren soil into fields of hope, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is to love where the world tells you to hate, because love, in the end, is the only thing worth planting. Sheaf of Rice. This story shows us that kindness and love can heal even the deepest wounds. If this tale touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and tell us your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd love to hear more inspiring Wild West stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and join our family, because every story we share is a reminder that humanity still wins. Cowboy Hotface Sparkles.